The lobby of Henderson Enterprises gleamed like a palace of glass and marble. Polished floors reflected the swirl of designer shoes, the air hummed with quiet reverence, and every employee knew that when Oliver Henderson, their CEO, entered the building, silence followed him like a shadow. That morning, Oliver strode through the revolving doors precisely at 8:30. He never came late, never smiled, never faltered. In his world, precision was power. The staff straightened in an instant, whispering his name behind screens and coffee cups. He looked like the definition of control, a charcoal gray suit pressed to perfection, silver cuff links glinting under the light. Yet beneath that flawless exterior lay a loneliness he never admitted to anyone. Success had cost him warmth, laughter, and love. His life was meetings, mergers, and contracts. Nothing more. Then, amid the rhythm of clicking heels and elevator chimes, a small voice echoed through the lobby. "Daddy, wait, you forgot your lunch." The sound froze the air. Heads turned, phones lowered. The guards at the reception desk exchanged looks of disbelief. And Oliver, the most untouchable man in the city, stopped walking. He turned, brows slightly furrowed. A little girl, no older than 6, was sprinting toward him, clutching a pink lunchbox decorated with faded cartoon stickers. Her brown curls bounced wildly as her small shoes squeaked across the floor. She was out of breath, eyes wide and hopeful. The guards stepped forward, unsure if they should intervene, but Oliver raised a hand. Something about her voice, that desperate innocence, made his heart clench. When she finally reached him, she held out the lunchbox with trembling hands. "You forgot your lunch, Daddy," she said softly, panting. "Mommy said you always forget." The entire lobby seemed to stop breathing. Oliver blinked, completely thrown off balance. He crouched slightly to meet her gaze. The little girl looked at him with such pure certainty that for a second, he almost believed her. "Sweetheart," he said carefully, "I think you might have the wrong person." But she only frowned, shaking her head so hard her curls flew. "No, you're Daddy. Mommy showed me your picture, you just look a little tired today." A faint laugh rippled through the room, quickly stifled. Oliver's throat tightened, not from anger, but something unfamiliar, a twinge of ache in his chest. He stared at the tiny lunchbox in her hands. It had a crayon-drawn heart on the lid, and inside it, written in uneven letters, "Love you, Daddy Heart Lila." He whispered, "Lila." Before he could ask more, the lobby doors burst open and a woman rushed in, her hair slightly messy, her nurse's uniform creased, her face pale from panic. "Lila," she gasped, dropping her bag and running across the floor. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir. She must have." The child turned, guilt flickering in her eyes. "But Mommy, he forgot his lunch." The woman's face flushed crimson. She scooped the girl into her arms, murmuring apologies that stumbled over each other. "Please, Mr. Henderson," she thought, she. Oliver lifted a hand gently. "It's all right, she just made a mistake." But as he looked at the woman, Emily Carter, as her hospital badge read, he noticed the exhaustion behind her eyes, the kind that came from endless night shifts and unpaid bills. She held her daughter with protective desperation, as if afraid the world might take her away. "Your daughter seems determined," he said softly. Emily nodded, embarrassed. Her father left when she was 3. She still looks for him. Every man in a suit becomes her dad in her imagination. Her voice cracked on the last word. Oliver's jaw tightened. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. Something about the woman's trembling composure, and the little girl's unshakable faith, stirred something deep in him, a faint memory of loss, perhaps, or the ache of everything money couldn't buy. He glanced once more at the lunchbox, then at the girl still peeking at him from her mother's shoulder. "She's brave," he murmured. Emily managed a weak smile. "Too brave for her own good." The elevator behind him chimed. Oliver straightened, regaining his polished composure. "Send your contact information to my assistant," he said. "If she ever gets lost again, I want to make sure she's safe." Emily nodded quickly, clutching Lila close. "Thank you, sir. I promise this won't happen again." As Oliver stepped into the elevator, he realized he was still holding the pink lunchbox. When the doors began to close, he looked down at the crayon heart again. "Love you forever, Daddy." For a man who believed emotions were weaknesses, that single sentence felt heavier than any business deal he'd ever signed. The elevator doors shut, and for the first time in a decade, Oliver Henderson felt something crack open inside his chest, a tiny, unfamiliar warmth he didn't yet understand. For the rest of that day, Oliver Henderson couldn't focus. The pink lunchbox sat on the edge of his desk, taunting him between meetings. No matter how many contracts he signed or how many numbers he saw, his eyes kept drifting back to that childish scrawl, "Love you forever, Daddy." It had been years since anyone had written him anything by hand. Years since someone had looked at him not as the CEO of Henderson Enterprises, but as a person. When evening came, his assistant, Claire, hesitated at his office door. "Sir, your driver's waiting," she said softly, glancing at the lunchbox. "Should I return that to the child's mother?" Oliver looked up, his pen stilled. For a moment, he didn't know why he felt a pull to do it himself. But something inside whispered that he needed to. "No," he said quietly. "I'll handle it, dash dash dash." It was raining by the time he reached the address his assistant had found, a small apartment complex on the poorer side of the city. The streetlights flickered, water dripped from rusty balconies. For a man used to penthouses and boardrooms, this place felt like another world. He climbed the stairs, the lunchbox still in his hand. From behind one door came a sound that stopped him cold, a soft lullaby. He recognized the voice instantly, the nurse, Emily. He hesitated, then knocked gently. The door creaked open. Emily stood there in a faded t-shirt, her hair damp from a shower, a towel still in her hand. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw him, the same man her daughter had mistaken for her father, now standing outside her home in the rain. "Mr. Henderson," she breathed. "What are you?" "I brought this," he said, lifting the lunchbox slightly. "Your daughter left it with me." Her gaze softened, a flush of embarrassment and gratitude mixing in her expression. "Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry about this morning. She didn't mean to cause trouble." "I know," he said. "She just reminded me of someone I used to know." For a few seconds, silence filled the doorway. Emily seemed unsure whether to invite him in, but Lila's voice interrupted from inside. "Mommy, who's at the door?" the little girl asked, skipping into view, and when she saw him, her eyes went wide with joy. "Daddy." Oliver froze, but before he could respond, she had already hugged his legs. Emily's face turned crimson. "Lila, that's not." But Oliver raised a hand, a small, almost nervous smile forming on his face. "It's okay," he said softly, crouching down. "You can call me Mr. Oliver." "All right," she nodded solemnly. "Okay, Mr. Oliver, did you eat your lunch?" He chuckled quietly. "Not yet." That made her giggle, the kind of pure, musical laugh that somehow made the dim apartment feel brighter. Emily exhaled, shaking her head, but couldn't hide her small smile. For the first time since he arrived, Oliver noticed the tiny details of their life, the cracked wallpaper, the single couch patched with fabric, the scent of soup simmering on a stove that had seen better days. "You're working late again?" he asked gently. "Every night," Emily admitted. "Double shifts at the hospital. Rent doesn't wait." Oliver hesitated before saying, "You shouldn't have to do it all alone." She gave a small laugh. "That's life, isn't it? You do what you have to." He looked around the modest home, the worn toys on the floor, the stack of unpaid bills under a mug. He'd spent his career chasing billions, but for the first time, he felt poor in ways no amount of money could fix. Lila tugged at his sleeve. "Mommy makes pancakes on Fridays," she whispered. "You can come if you want." "Lila," Emily gasped, mortified, but Oliver smiled, touched by the child's innocent kindness. "I'll keep that in mind," he said, his voice softer than it had been in years. He stood, glancing once more at Emily. "You're a strong woman, Ms. Carter." Most people would have given up. Her eyes met his, uncertain. "You'd be surprised what a mother can survive for her child." Something about those words hit him deeply. He reached into his jacket and handed her a card. "If you ever need help, any help, call this number." "Not charity," he added quickly when he saw her hesitation. "Just a favor between parents." Emily blinked, touched but guarded. "Thank you, but I don't want to owe anyone." He gave a faint smile. "Then let's just say you don't owe me, you owe her." He nodded toward Lila, who was now humming and drawing on the wall with a crayon. The rain eased outside. For a long moment, Oliver lingered at the door, reluctant to leave. Then he finally stepped back into the night, clutching an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. As he got into his car, he caught one last glimpse through the apartment window, Emily lifting her daughter onto her lap, both laughing softly under the yellow glow of a single lamp. And for the first time in years, the lonely CEO realized he envied someone not for their wealth, but for their love. He whispered to himself, maybe I didn't return her lunch, maybe she gave me mine back. Days turned into weeks, but Oliver Henderson couldn't shake the memory of that small apartment, the warmth of the woman who worked herself to exhaustion, and the little girl who believed love could be found in anyone kind enough to smile back. He told himself it was curiosity, then compassion, but deep down, it was something else, something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. Every morning, he found excuses to drive by the hospital where Emily Carter worked. He'd sit in his car, watching her step out after night shifts, her shoulders drooping but her spirit unbroken. Sometimes, he caught sight of Lila waiting in the courtyard across the street, drawing on her notebook while waiting for her mom. He never approached. He didn't want to intrude. Until one evening, fate decided otherwise. The hospital's emergency lights flashed red in the rain. Oliver's car was stopped at the intersection when he noticed Emily, standing outside the building, soaked, trembling, her arms wrapped around Lila. The girl was crying, coughing hard, and Emily looked like she was breaking apart. Without a thought, Oliver jumped out, running toward them through the downpour. Emily, he called. She turned, startled, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Mr. Henderson, what happened? He asked urgently, kneeling beside the shivering child. She couldn't breathe, Emily stammered. Asthma attack. I ran her here, but they're full tonight, short-staffed. They said we have to wait. Oliver glanced at the little girl's pale face and trembling lips. He didn't think, he acted. No waiting, he said firmly, scooping Lila into his arms. Wait, you can't just, Emily began, but he was already striding toward the emergency doors. Doctors froze when they saw who had entered. Oliver's name carried power in that building. Henderson Enterprises funded half their equipment. Treat her, he ordered, voice low and sharp. Now. They moved instantly. Within seconds, nurses rushed forward, whisking Lila to a treatment room. Emily stood there in shock, watching as the billionaire who ruled boardrooms now looked like a terrified father pacing outside a hospital curtain. Minutes felt like hours. When the doctor finally came out, he smiled softly. She's okay. The attack passed. She'll need an inhaler and rest, but she's strong. Emily's knees nearly gave out. Thank God. Oliver exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. They stepped inside. Lila was lying in bed, tiny oxygen mask over her face, eyes fluttering open. When she saw Oliver, she reached out her hand weakly. You came back, Daddy, she whispered. He froze. Emily opened her mouth to correct her, but stopped when she saw Oliver's face. The way he looked at Lila wasn't pity or awkwardness anymore. It was love, real, raw, and wordless. He sat beside her, gently taking her hand. Of course I came back, he said softly. I wouldn't leave you. The little girl smiled faintly, then drifted back to sleep. The silence that followed was fragile, filled with the quiet hum of the heart monitor. Emily turned to him, eyes glistening. You didn't have to do that. You've done enough already. He shook his head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I couldn't stand to lose her. Something shifted between them, something unspoken but undeniable. Emily had seen powerful men before, arrogant and proud. But this man beside her was stripped of every wall, every mask. He wasn't the CEO of Henderson Enterprises anymore. He was just Oliver, a man who finally remembered what it meant to care. Over the next few days, Oliver visited the hospital every evening. He brought flowers for Emily, coloring books for Lila, and laughter that the small room hadn't heard in a long time. Emily resisted at first, afraid of what people would say, afraid of hope. But Oliver was patient. He didn't try to buy their affection, he earned it with presence. One night, as Lila slept peacefully, Emily found Oliver sitting by the window, gazing at the city lights. You don't have to keep coming, she said gently. He smiled faintly. Maybe I don't want to stop. Why? She whispered. He looked at her, really looked at her, and said, because for the first time in my life, I have someone waiting for me. And that's worth more than everything I own. Emily's breath caught. There were tears in her eyes, but also warmth. She sat beside him, their shoulders brushing, a silent promise neither dared to speak aloud. A month later, Lila was discharged. The morning sun poured over the hospital steps as she ran ahead, laughing, clutching her inhaler like a trophy. Emily turned to Oliver, gratitude shining in her gaze. You changed our lives, she said softly. He shook his head. No, you two changed mine. Then Lila ran back, tugging at both their hands and saying the words that sealed everything. Can we go home now, together? Emily froze. Oliver smiled, his voice quiet, steady. Yes, sweetheart, let's go home. As they walked down the street, one little girl between two souls who'd thought they were broken, the world seemed to slow around them. And for the first time in forever, Oliver Henderson wasn't the lonely CEO anymore. He was something far greater. He was a father.